Gents, I have just cracked a tall, cold can of Rip It, and I just have one question that I want answered while I enjoy my first few sips, and it is, Simon, is there a war going on in the Persian Gulf? Simon, is there a ceasefire? Simon, is there a blockade?
Here's what I want to say about the police action. What are we calling it? Whatever it is, maybe the battle after the war has really denigrated the value of my state school political science education, in which I was taught very specifically that if you even blockade somebody, it's a war, de facto war. And now I don't know what a war is. I thought I knew what a war was. I don't. I've learned that you can have battles after wars, but that's not the same war. I've learned that fighting and killing and dying in defense of your country, not a war. Could be something else entirely. Don't trust your gut on this. Wait for the media to tell you what is and isn't a war.
Wait for the media to tell you, and the media is telling us many things at this point. And again, I'm not defending the Trump administration per se, but this is Trump admin MO, right? This is make a swirling mess of chaos around the thing. Don't be clear about your thinking on it or your objectives or whatever, and thereby create opportunity. I think that's the most charitable kind of like abstracted way to think about what's going on. And given that we're only 2 months and change into conflict, it was February 24th or 28th or something was the kickoff for the Iran stuff, the non-war war or whatever it is. And so we're 2 months and change into it. That's not actually that long of a time period. And despite all the noise around Brent crude prices and futures and stuff, like it's actually more stable than I think the hyperbolic, commentary.
Oman just left OPEC, Garrett. Historic OPEC departure, and they said because its prices are so high that they can leave, and they did.
No, so the Emiratis are famous for not being clear about what it is they're doing and wanting, and I think what they're observing is that there's an opportunity to facilitate oil pipeline construction that has, historically been blocked or deterred by their participation in OPEC. So they want to be unshackled in participating in the energy economy. That's my read on it. Again, whatever. I don't know, but
there's a video of them very specifically saying the reason we can leave is because the price is high. We don't think it's going to come down, so we can go crank out supply on our own, separate from OPEC.
Sure, yeah. So, wouldn't you consider doing that? Maybe you wouldn't do it.
I'm not saying if it's right or wrong. I'm saying the price is definitively high, so high that Oman has said out loud, "Hey, price is so high, we're leaving. We can do our own thing now."
You're saying Oman. I'm pretty sure it's the United Arab Emirates.
Is it the UAE? Oh, it's Oman. Maybe
I'm pretty sure it's the United Arab Emirates, but Oman might be in there too. I don't know. Regardless, I don't see anything really wrong with that. And oil prices actually aren't higher than like some historical highs in the past. I mean, this is interesting. I'm not saying it's stable. I'm not saying it's good. I'm just saying it's not as volatile and crazy as the hyperbolic commentary would have us believe. Anyway, this police action, military contingency, non-blockade, blockade,
certainly has nothing to do with it. Unrelated topics for sure. The war, not war, couldn't possibly have affected it. It's not even a war.
Right. So, continued confusion, and I suppose there's still chance for goodness to come out of it. Certainly, we've seen. I saw an article the other day about how this is the first AI war. Of course, AI not war, whatever it is. So, but like the idea that we are deploying capability infused with artificial intelligence is a revolution in military affairs, dare I say, in RMA. And I guess we'll see. Okay, so with that as our entry point for a conversation, welcome to the Goat Rodeo podcast. I'm your host, Garrett Smith, joined by fellow co-hosts Simon Coon, wearing desert popcorn camouflage top, and Dave Caudle, regular co-host, wearing a blazer and polo because he's a classy guy. And I think that's a reveal lapel pin you're wearing. So again, the class act.
It is.
So
Thank
let's
you to our producer. Thank you to our producer for designing a new pin for us. It's good.
that's right. Thank you, producer Ian. I know we usually do this at the end of podcasts, but actually, we're going to keep it for end of podcast. Simon, be prepared to defend that shirt.
Yeah, got it.
And
Correct.
topic number one here. This last week or two have been pretty significant in the defense technology venture arena. The big one is that True Anomaly, a Colorado-based space startup, so orbital platform, space security, in-orbit defense systems, etc., raised $600 million. They're based in Centennial, not a big city, but a cool place. They've been through some like bumpy bumpy months and years historically. They lost a couple of their early prototype birds they put in orbit. A lot of learning. Space is very difficult, right? And it's this is being styled as a Series D, led by Eclipse and Riot Ventures, with participation from a bunch of folks that we know: Excel, 645 Ventures, G Squared, Acme Capital, Menlo Ventures, Paradigm. And this round brings their private valuation to 1.1 billion. So welcome, True Anomaly, to the Unicorn Club. You guys have thoughts, opinions on True Anomaly or space as a category? It's pretty distant from what we're doing and thinking about at the so-called kind of ground-based tactical edge of the battle space. But any thoughts on True Anomaly and or space?
Terrifying. Very scared of space. Worse than dark water. I'm not going in the either.
Dark water meaning like the vast reaches of undersea terrain.
Where the water gets dark. We can't see the bottom.
Totally. Yeah.
It's no good.
Scary. Super scary.
Both of them have aliens. I got no interest.
Yeah. We could go down the rabbit hole in a future podcast on alien or non-human intelligence presence in the world's oceans, but let's hold that for a different podcast discussion. Okay. Another big round, $100 million into Scout AI. I think we have a little bit more familiarity with these guys and touch points with them. This is a Sunnyvale, California startup. This is a Series A, and it's all about kind of autonomy, AI, artificial intelligence systems for robotic command and control, I think is the big umbrella category. What think you? What think you about Scout AI? They seem to be on the path, and that's a big round, big Series A.
That's like the biggest Series A in our space, isn't it?
I think there have been some others that have been giant, but none are coming to mind. It's sizable.
I'm not intimately familiar, but I'm familiar with Fury. I think that this reads to me like a bet on, the winners here probably may not be the drone or autonomous systems vendors, but who controls the swarm. The way that I understand Fury, what we're betting on here is translation of commander's intent to sort of autonomous execution, and that C2 of robotic systems. And I think that translates, if I understand Fury correctly, I think that's beyond just, flying drone swarms. That's also mixed fleets, air, land, sea, space, like the orchestration of all of these autonomous systems, which I think
I think it's about, I think it's multi-robot coordination, collaboration, orchestration for one-to-many command and control with humans in or on the loop and that sort of thing. Fury, tell me a bit more about Fury. What is that?
As I understand it, and probably can't go much deeper here, it's exactly what I was just describing. Like this is the layer of robotic C2 or autonomous system C2.
So this is that's a foundation model. This is like an artificial intelligence software capability. It's not some hardware platform, right? Okay. Well, interesting background from the leadership over there. I think I've met Colby Adcock, the CEO, but I know of Colin Otis, who was formerly of Kodiak Robotics and prolific in the sensing and perception space for autonomy platforms. And it's interesting to see folks who have been deep on the commercial and industry side of autonomy pivot into defense specific applications. So the Scout AI round was led by let's see, some of the folks that we know, but Align Ventures and Draper Associates led the round, but there were a bunch of other participants. to include Booz Allen Ventures and others that we know. Brian McCarthy's been on the podcast before a number of times, and we wish them well. It's exciting. I don't see defense ventures slowing down as I've predicted. I think it was going to plateau or heat up. I mean, this is I think a major category for years to come. This is my prognostication. Any other thoughts on the? Yeah, go ahead.
I think our familiarity comes from we're familiar with the company. We're also familiar with the problem just because we spend so much time on the range, overlapping with, robotic systems and vendors. The state of the art seems to be that it's really easy to task an autonomous system or give them a list of tasks to execute, series of waypoints. Go to this observation post, sit down, power down, stare at this intersection and tell me if you see one of these three things coming. That sort of list of tasks. It's really hard to give the systems intent and have them execute intent without the list of tasks. And it's even harder to do that with a team of robotic systems. So I think there's like a really compelling need here for somebody to build that autonomous systems C2 structure. But I think it's really, really hard. It's probably going to require, I think it's an undertaking that is fraught with like high technical risk.
It's my perspective that stuff like Fury that they're building, this kind of like collaborative brain, intelligence layer that sits in and around the command and control stack for multi-robotic kind of collaboration. It seems to me that that's like relatively binary for the military as an acquisition and a fielding option, right? So like either it's adopted or it's not, and at some level it's either like the single one that is selected for broad-based multi-robot collaboration, or it's not. And in the same way that we view hardware as being risky, it seems risky to try to position as like the one software layer to orchestrate and command it all, right? And so again, startups are risky generally, so this isn't necessarily any more risky than anything else. But do you have any sense for whether this thing is being like Fury is being actively tested? And as a side note, Simon, you're right, that was the largest Series A round in defense technology history.
Yeah, I got our specific lane.
Yeah,
which is wild.
Yeah,
I don't think we have enough.
Yeah,
go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was going to restate the question, just tee you up again. Sorry, I interrupted myself, which is normal for me if you guys know me.
I don't think that we have enough like specific customer overlap for me to answer with confidence the like stage of testing and evaluation that it's in. I do think that binary is a good way to put it. There is probably one massive winner in this space. It's going to have its tentacles into everything, multi-service, joint capabilities. Like this is probably more like a lattice sort of like application where there's one winner. At least that's my strong assumption.
Yeah, it is interesting that I'm reading a piece on them. No cloud required is something that they tout. So this is like intended to be operable at the edge on relatively low powered inference chips. So I wonder if there's also a necessity for the robotic platforms and the C2 networking layers and other pieces of architecture in these edge environments have to first adopt a set of inference chips as part of like the standard build or manufacturing set of requirements for any of these platforms, which again, like that's a big bet to make that will get adopted, because that is a precursor requirement to adopting the Fury platform generally. But I think it's probably safe to assume that all edge devices, smartphones, small flying drones, ground robots, whatever, are going to start having inference ready chips sets regardless, right? Like this is a thing that we can assume will happen in the same way that we assume as a company that smartphones are going to continue to proliferate and remain in the tactical edge environment, and or other devices that allow for similar levels of compute to reside at the edge. So I don't know if you see that as a critical bottleneck, or if this is just now table stakes for this industry. We're going to see inference-ready chips in all edge devices.
I mean, the Scout AI adoption that's taken place so far has been primarily in the ground vehicle space, where there is more room, easier swap requirements, so to speak. I don't know. I haven't seen their stuff in the like small drone space yet, and I got to imagine that's part of the equation. There's like a physical component and they're going to have to figure out how to get that physical component onto a increasingly diverse landscape.
Yep. So
Also,
we don't need to. Yeah, go ahead,
also,
Dave. Go.
yeah, sorry, last point. Also a competitive one, and it may be I might be missing the nuance or the unique value propositions here, but I feel like I've seen at least marketing material, if not demonstrations of very similar capabilities from like Shield AI's, I think HiveMind, Palantir's AIP. I'm also not sure if this is a space that Anduril's Lattice intends to consume, but in that, as you described, Gary, in that binary game, I think there's probably one big winner, and I can't comment on the unique value proposition if they're a better position than Shield is here.
What do you happen to know, Dave? What the flagship programs would be across the Department of War that would kind of be the bellwether programs to adopt something like this that would then proliferate and trickle out? So, as an example, I think Scout AI's major kind of program target is the infantry squad vehicle program. After
ISV,
winning
yeah.
multiple X-Tech, competition, so ISV, right? So it makes sense to me that like ISV maybe is the bellwether or the flagship program within the U.S. Army, which is obviously the major program manager for all ground kind of mobility stuff across the Department of War. But are there other programs, or is that the one?
So I think the correct program that this sort of capability would be aimed at is the Joint Program Executive Office for autonomous systems, or autonomous systems command and control, which doesn't exist. So I think that we will probably see this. We'll probably see the ISV type programs that are working on multiple autonomous systems needing to collaborate and work together or execute intent as opposed to a series of tasks. We'll see offices like ISV pick these up as we collectively, as the Department of Defense, decide to invest in something that looks like a joint program executive office, which I think is actually the answer here.
Yeah, got it. That makes sense to me. We talked with retired General Ross Kaufman a number of weeks ago on this podcast. We talked about the history of vehicles, specifically in the Army around armor and mechanized capabilities, and the advent of autonomous vehicles through the remote combat vehicle RCV light, medium, heavy programs. Am I right in understanding that the ISV, the infantry squad vehicle, is that like an out an outgrowth from those RSV programs? Is it aligned? Is it the same platform? What is this likely to look like?
Yeah, the ISV, or the infantry squad vehicle, is all part of that same concept of what does our next gen vehicle fleet look like? What is manned? What is unmanned? And what is optionally manned? And I actually am not, as not being a vehicle guy or not spending a ton of time at GVSC or the vehicle folks in Michigan, unfamiliar with the specifics of the ISV specifically. But I think it's one of the optionally manned, which is where they come in. So you've got, and we have been to a series of tests where you have, a manned vehicle that's operating a mission, and you have optionally manned vehicles that are unmanned, and you have a swarm of UAS systems, and one UAS passes a partially occluded target and says to the rest of the robotic team, "Hey, I'm 90% confident that I just saw a partially occluded Russian BTR-80." And then that cues the next UAS system to confirm that, and then they pass it to the ground maneuver robotic robotic systems with wheels, who then maneuver to get eyes on it, and then they send back to the user, "Okay, I'm 95% confident that this is a Russian BTR-80. It's been confirmed by 2 drones. Here's a picture of it. Here's where it is in time and space. Do you want me to follow it, track it, or shoot it?" Which is then passed to the user. And I feel like that's where that's sort of the value proposition of Fury is that's all automated until it gets to the user's tablet.
Do we think that I love that description and kind of like the promise of a swarm capability applied to ground vehicles for primarily reconnaissance, but I guess the endpoint or the kill chain or the kill web could be any number of different outcomes. But it seems like the Fury platform by Scout AI is aimed, at least initially and maybe only, at ground vehicle autonomy and swarming. So are we to assume that aerial robots are going to be controlled by like a different capability, and that they would need to integrate or collaborate at some level? Because eventually all things need to talk to each other at some level, right? So would it be logical to assume that Scout AI over time is going to expand into aerial vehicle command and control, or are they just not domain experts enough
all
to do
domains?
that?
All domains. I assume at this point they're just following the path of least resistance, so they can continue to mature
They're
the
targeting
capability.
aerial for sure.
They're going to go after aerial. They'll go after unmanned surface vessels as well if they're not already. It will be air, land, sea, all of it, because these, like in any given operational context, all of those robotic teams, like you can't separate them. Multiple of those robotic teams are going to be working together, if not all three. You both track back to the United States Marine Corps. What robotic systems are going to be relevant in a beach landing or assault? It's going to be USVs, surface autonomous surface vessels, flying robotic systems or airborne robotic systems, UAS, and probably like potentially an amphibious ground assault vehicle or something that carries a javelin on it.
Yeah, I guess my question there was not will swarming autonomy feature in all domains? Of course it will. I'm wondering if the Department of War, through a joint program office, will they end up acquiring and fielding a single vendor's autonomy collaboration platform like Fury to command and control and provide autonomy capabilities across all of those domains of robotic and unmanned and swarming capabilities? Or will it be a multi-vendor approach where you've got whatever, a hive mind at high altitude, a lattice at medium altitude, Fury on the ground, and then something else in the middle?
I got to jump in. The DoD does not have enough of a central brain to even buy a single vendor at that scale. So you could potentially see like the Army buys one, and then the Navy buys a different one. Maybe they buy the same one, but I would be shocked to see a DoW wide. And it's extraordinarily rare to even have. It would require a Department of War level procurement action, which is like what the F-35 is. So you would have to have like a really intense joint program office to even buy something like that mechanically.
Dave, isn't that what you're talking about, though? You're talking about the emergence of a joint program office around this kind of capability set.
I think I've talked
That
about
doesn't
it
exist yet
in this forum before, but
as a procurement entity, it doesn't exist yet.
Yes,
it doesn't exist yet, but it will. Dave, isn't that what you're saying, or is that not? I may have misheard.
I don't know that I'm not saying that with any confidence that it will. I'm saying that it should.
Okay, got it.
The creation of a joint program executive office is in autonomy and robotics and autonomous systems is necessary. It was necessary 3 years ago. It is very necessary now.
So we are seeing joint OSD directed joint level capability development and hypothetical future fielding of counter UAS stuff, right? So Joint Interagency Task Force 401, which eventually has procurement activities fielding capability to the joint force in the counter UAS environment.
The way I understand it is even they are pumping money outward. They're not like, we're going to buy this system for the joint force to use.
But they are defining joint requirements. Is that how that's working? Okay. We don't know. All right.
That's the limits of my knowledge.
So the reason I bring that up, sorry, hold on. The reason I bring that up is that at some level that is an autonomy capability, right? The counter UAS, detect all the way through to defeat, right? That is an autonomy layer. It requires kind of coordination or collaboration amongst sensors and robots and otherwise autonomous capabilities, or just humans making decisions in the battlefield, and gets into the fires, gets into kind of joint fires environments. And if that's true, then why wouldn't we see the emergence of a joint office in the way that you're describing, Dave? In other words, it makes sense to me. That doesn't mean that it makes sense to the DoW and that they will do the thing that makes sense to us, but doesn't that make sense to you? Like it almost has to be a joint thing.
I believe it does. I just think it's really hard from probably a policy perspective and a budget perspective. And I mean, this is the creation of a joint program executive office with the authorities that would need is a many years game that probably trends more to Simon's domain than it does mine. Capitol Hill is going to have to authorize the creation of a new entity with that much power. I'm actually not sure. I think there's only, I might be misquoting here. I'm sure I'll get corrected via signal as I usually do. I think there's only 2 joint program executive offices at the moment. So, I mean, if you know, correct me if I'm wrong. So chem bio defense, right? There's ubiquitous, like not everybody needs a different gas mask. They might need a different detector, sensor, like cleaning agent or whatever. But gas masks can be ubiquitous across services. Everybody has the same, roughly the same exposure.
And mop suits, dude. I've lived in a mop suit for weeks in the training environment, and not my favorite thing. But I understood it to be a joint program.
Yeah, so we gain a lot by we gain a lot of efficiency by buying that in one single place, and then we have armaments and ammunition. They're a lot like 5.56 round is the same 5.56 round largely for the Navy and the Air Force, security forces, and the Army. My point here is, I assume, or I know that a lot of this work on how we're going to command and control teams of robotic systems or armies of robotic systems, which is probably where we'll get. That's happening with a service as a lead, one of the services a lead, and an IPT across the services. But then they have to go to the same places that, a JIDA 401 does, which is a place with procurement authorities to execute. And
right.
Like, you sort of have to have one service lead and the other services either choose to follow or choose to buy something different, and then figure out how to integrate it or connect it with a larger system later. My point is, this problem is too big to not have a multi-service like team of acquisitions professionals and researchers working on it.
Makes sense to me. Okay, well, we will see over time. I'm sure that we didn't fully exhaust the venture rounds going to the defense technology arena, but we covered probably the two big ones: True Anomaly, and Scout AI. Let's move off that topic and talk about one of our customer sets that I think is often touted as like the fast track into selling capability to the Defense Department or the defense industry, which is SOF, Special Operations Forces, and U.S. Special Operations Command. I'm going to hand that mic off to Dave.
Yep. Thanks.
Okay.
That was right. That was right.
Garrett Smith.
Oh man, I feel like it's an Anchorman reference.
Also, I just got to take a pause. This Ripit is brutal. It's brutal in the way that you need a Ripit to be brutal.
No.
You don't want it to treat you kindly. You want it to shake you. It's doing that to me. It's doing that to me.
All the camo like colored cans are.
It's not can. I mean, it's like an explosion.
Is that not orange
digital?
Camo?
It is. Here? No. It is. It is. Anyway, sorry, Dave. Sorry. Go ahead.
No, it's okay. I'm distracted because the sort of like catering or weird stuff. Folks keep bringing me stuff, and this is you're drinking Ripit. I'm drinking tea, but it's not sweet tea. I was born and raised in the South, and I like my tea like insulin. I guess maybe I'm not far enough south for that. So
are you hold on? Are you south of the Mason-Dixon? Where are you?
I am.
You're in Virginia.
I am. I'm in Virginia.
Okay.
Technically in the South.
I think I could probably get some sweet tea if I screamed up. I don't know. Does it really count? Does the National Capital Region really count?
Culturally not Southern, but technically in the South.
All right. So back to SOF. So I am in Virginia. I'm engaged with a set of SOF customers all day. So this topic is top of mind for me. And every time I'm engaged in the SOF ecosystems, or engaging with other vendors, or in many cases founders that are excited or appropriately excited to be working with SOF, I hear like a really predictable list of what I believe to be myths. And you alluded to the first one, Garrett. So I just want to say this for recording and posterity. The first myth that I hear frequently is SOF moves incredibly fast and buys whatever works. And I would assert that SOF doesn't move fast. Motivated people inside SOF can move fast. If you don't have one, it's just sort of another demo. They still have a process. They have to have an operational need. They have to have a champion. They have to have funding. They have to have a contract. The intersection and execution of all those things can move faster with their unique authorities, but they still have a process. It's not a magic place where you can do one cool demo and be off to the races with funding and selling product. Any objections there? I'll move on to myth number 2.
No, I think it's a valuable thing to discuss here, because so many of our listeners, so many of the people who are engaged in our community enter with this kind of like blithe statement that, oh, it's going to be easy. We'll just go to SOF, or like, I'm a SEAL or I'm a Green Beret. I'm just going to go back to my old, community and, sell
So
them on stuff because it's easy. It's the front door, right?
that's actually the second one that I was going to queue up,
Got it.
or maybe
Yeah.
third. It
Yeah,
doesn't
sure.
matter. So relationships are everything, right? We have an inside man. We have one of us, somebody that's part of the crew, part of the tribe, and they're going to be able to help us with product movement or revenue or whatever. I think it's important to understand that like trusted members of the soft community are an incredibly important component. Just the same way that it's helpful that I'm able to talk credibly about an airfield seizure operation. Like you need somebody who can talk credibly about that unique mission set, and they need to be sort of trusted and part of the team or part of the tribe. But this is a highly discerning community, and the capability has to be really good and really solve a problem for them. There's no amount of relationship capital that can solve if the thing doesn't truly solve a need based off of just this very capable, discerning customer. So start with something good, and sort of you can figure out start with something good, and you can figure out the relationship person that you need to bring on board later, or you can start with a relationship person and then have them tell you exactly what to build, one or the other. The other one that sort of weaves into the other two, and I hear this one very frequently. Like, okay, we've got the SEALs on the hook, or the Rangers on the hook, or the Green Beret community on the hook, or whatever. Our strategy as a company is to start with the soft forces, start with the bell of the ball, and we'll get fielded with them, or we'll get them to use our capability, and everybody else will want what they've got. There are some, I think, unique cases, especially when it comes to like ammo, helmets, stuff like that, where that's the case. But it's important to understand that although it's helpful, these are different mission sets. They're different mission sets. They're different needs. They're drastically different budgets per user. And the way that I like to think, and I think we think about the SOF as a customer, is they're a great customer. They're highly discerning, but as a customer, they're very valuable as a collaborator to help you build against a problem that they have that the larger force may have in the coming years. There's a lot of overlap. There, but this fallacy that I hear constantly, which is if a tiered unit buys it, or if a soft unit buys it, then everybody else in the Department of Defense is going to want what they have or can buy, is not the way that these capabilities scale in my mind. And that's not to say that you can't
Dave,
build.
is the flip side of that is, yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say the flip side to that is also true in our experience. And in other words, if they deem a new technology inferior or bad, that's also kind of the flip side is true. So even if they adopt it, it's not a foregone conclusion that the conventional forces will adopt it, as you're saying. But if they decide not to buy it, and there's kind of like a negative judgment on the capability, it will actually like translate into less interest or intention from the conventional forces. In other words, they read that as a I don't know, like a filter for their consideration as well. Is that true?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that's an appropriate risk to identify. And we see these as like, we talk about them as drastically different markets. They have different missions and they have different authorities. Yes, but a lot of the people are the same people. Like lots of our soft commanders end up becoming major conventional or theater forces commanders. A lot of these folks spend their entire careers going back and forth between some version of the special operations community and some version of the conventional community. If you promised a thing, didn't deliver correctly, or didn't meet the problem, or you burned your professional reputation in one case, like it can kill you it can kill you when that human progresses their career or translates to becoming the commander of the large conventional force. But just because you impressed them or impressed them in their soft role does not mean that they're going to help you solve what if they don't have a true mission need for the same capability and when they're on the conventional side. That's not to say all this is not to say that there haven't been companies that have been very successful solving hard soft problems and being a go-to soft hard problem solver. Their entire business is built around that. It's just not I think it's a fallacy to think that is the strategy for scaling.
Yeah. I mean, there's certainly not the level of enterprise buyer that one of the big services is, right? So like 30 plus infantry brigade combat teams across the US Army, like it dwarfs any other component by multiples, right? I mean, it's so anyhow, like true scale, I think cannot really be achieved, at least not for companies like ours that are venture backed and have really big enterprise grade aspirations or program of record, ownership across multiple service aspirations. So it certainly isn't the end point for a company that is ambitious and aggressive.
Absolutely. But they are critical to our national security. They are critical. They do have a critical mission. So we're always going to support and work with the SOF customer. And they're also they have a lot of talent, a lot of deep technical expertise. They're a great product development or capability development partner in general.
Yeah, not least because they often are out in operational contexts when the conventional forces are simply back in the rear training, on in CONUS or on their home front facilities or whatever. So there's some real world kind of market exposure here at air quotes, market exposure to, true live conflict zones and operating contexts that are very useful, maybe even critical in fielding the right technology that's going to work when it counts. So yeah, agree.
Absolutely. It's part of a DoD go to market strategy. It just can't be the whole thing, I think is the
right
point that I'm making.
Yep, that makes sense. Okay, well, I think that's useful. I bet we get some commentary back on more myths and truths or fallacies or whatever misconceptions about working with SOF, but we'll leave that to the comments thread and maybe we'll pick it back up in a future context, future podcast. Last topic, we're moving into a conversation about Army research development, test and evaluation, RDT&E budgets. Take it away. Is that also Dave?
No. This is Simon.
So
the services are on the Hill right now. This is SecDef. SecDef was on the Hill last week. Justifying their budget for the most part. Posture hearings with the policy committees, but we're in hearing season for the budgets. Obviously, we're looking at like a historically large DoD budget, 1.15 trillion in the base, potentially 350 billion in a future reconciliation play. And the recent Army budget hearing got some real traction around the RDT&E budget specifically. And the main sort of thrust of it, and for context, it's a $253 billion budget request for Army RDT&E this year, and that's like a 13% bump from last year, and it includes lots of things. It's almost $1 billion for Next Gen C2. It's $2 billion for the new tilt rotor aircraft, $500 million for Abrams modernization. Like, there's a ton of huge high priority stuff in this RDT&E budget. And what was mentioned during the House appropriations hearing is that there are historically 41 lines for auditing and sort of financial monitoring, and has been cut down to 4. There are 4 existing lines now. And there's a specific congressional concern there that I think is really interesting. But I think there's a larger philosophical concern as we look at like growing the defense budget. And the specific congressional concern is congressional oversight and the ability of Congress to like maintain its constitutional position as the owner of the purse strings. So the less that they can see how DoD is spending money, the easier it is for DoD to move money around. And on the plus side, that makes DoD a faster spender and a more nimble spender, and like a more responsive to operational needs. On the negative side, it is not the constitutional role, right? The role is for Congress to spend those dollars and decide how it gets spent. But I think it starts to lend toward something that I've been thinking about as we look at this historic budget, and particularly in our industry, of course, there's people jumping up and down in celebration of this like huge historic budget. It's time to make this good investment. I'm of the opposite opinion. And I think that a massive investment without correcting the way that you spend just means waste. You're fixing nothing. And so if your solution is just to add money to get yourself out of this, hole that we have in munitions and modernization and military construction. There's still a massive military construction backlog. We're not going to solve any of those problems. We're just going to put a really big Band-Aid, and then the admin's going to turn over, and you're not going to get 50% increases year over year on the defense budget, and everyone's going to have their hands back out going, oh my God, what can we do? And I'm not saying necessarily that the defense budget shouldn't be bigger. I don't know that I have a real hard and fast opinion on what the right size is without, it's an immense, massive, complicated thing. But I think there is a valid conversation to be had about, are we even sure we're spending in the right place before we before we really crank the volume up? And what are the long-term ramifications of this?
It seems like there would be ample opportunity to carve out specific areas or certain programs that have a bit less directed regulatory or congressional oversight and relatively more flexibility and freedom at, call it, the cutting edge or whatever. Whereas a lot of the defense budget probably should have fairly tight oversight. So is there a middle ground there? In other words, are there ways to achieve both, both?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough because you're really handcuffed in a lot of situations. And so I saw some posts and some writing about the reconciliation package, for example, and how essential it is. And a significant portion of that $350 billion goes to the defense industrial base and its investments in critical minerals and the Defense Production Act. And those are all hugely important things that are not immediate operational imperatives for the DoD, right? These are bigger industrial policy questions for America. Is that the right place for it to live? Is that a sustainable place for it to live? Will you ever get those investments again? Or is this a one-off? Do we think that $70 billion into the critical minerals industries once, is it all going to put us back on a footing to compete with China? Probably fucking not. It's going to require a much heavier whole of government to compete with the Chinese whole of government that is arrayed against it. So I wonder if we're buying into too much hype there, but then also there's a significant chunk of that reconciliation that goes to the F-35. And I don't think that there's any one left that it is a full-throated cheerleader for the F-35, but we are also kind of simultaneously handcuffed to it.
For any number of reasons, not least of which is that, like any good or canny, I'll call it, any canny defense prime, they've spread out the components and supply chain and manufacturing of that thing out to so many different congressional districts that they now are kind of so sticky or so big they can't be asked to stop.
Sure.
Yeah.
And you have to ask, what are the economic repercussions of reducing buys and shutting down lines? And then what are the political ramifications of putting that kind of local economic pressure in a package like reconciliation, which is not a guaranteed thing, right? We're not even sure if there's going to be time this congressional session for another reconciliation package. We're currently waiting on the current one for DHS, for CBP and ICE specifically, to fund them. That takes time. I mean, we're weeks into the process, and it's probably going to take a few more weeks to get that over the finish line. And then we still have to appropriate all the other bills and do all the NDAA and then do reconciliation. And all of October is going to be off, and all of August is going to be off because it's midterms.
I was going to say, this is an even bigger pressure cooker because of the midterm dynamic.
Yeah, you're running out of time, and it's almost like art imitating life, where there's trade-offs. And if the solution is we're going to crank it up, you're going to ignore the trade-offs. You're not solving any problems there. You're plastering over it. You're doing the landlord special. And so, as excited as I am, and I'm not afraid to say it, I think the Army's NGC2 budget is extraordinary. I'm very excited. I've never seen an investment in, call it, tactical software at that level ever. And it's entirely in RDT&E, and I do not see the plan to shift to procurement. And it's got challenges associated with it, right? That's not going to be a one-button press panacea to all of Army's command and control problems from a resourcing and budgeting perspective.
But it was
I think we're hiding it in the noise of a bigger budget.
It was one of the winners, right? What you've described, my takeaway from we're in that point in the cycle where, okay, we're not getting what we want or fast enough from our RDT&E investments. So ruthless prioritization. Let's track against, our 4 core modernization priorities, which are, autonomy and robotics, AI decision systems, network C2, long range fire survivability are the ones that we typically hear.
What is ruthless about this prioritization when you have a 13% increase to your top line?
Not consolidation, ruthless prioritization, consolidation.
Also, there is a never-ending list of quote priorities, 1 through 1 million, 1 through 10 million, whatever. And so I think you could at once have an increased top-line budget, but still have to be pretty ruthless or brutal or whatever on prioritization.
Here's what I'll add to that, which it's not the be-all end-all, but it's another signal. Every year, the services send up their unfunded priorities. Last year, it was a $27 billion list. This year, it's a $3 billion list. And it's almost entirely construction projects because the construction projects live in a different bill from the defense appropriations. We are truly clearing the decks with this thing. Like there's no, I'm sure there are some folks that have like truly parochial pet projects that were like, hey, we're not doing that. But for the most part, it looks a lot like you get a car and you get a car and you get a car and everybody gets a car. We're going to jam it down their throat.
Yeah. I mean, the reconciliation and the increase in top line budget getting somewhere in the range of $1.5 trillion in conjunction with each other in combination, that is sort of like a government wants to have its cake and eat it too. In other words, legacy programs, legacy prime contractors can still continue on the same trajectory they were on, maybe even increased trajectory, but you make room for new entrants, new programs without needing to do the kind of ruthless prioritization with a cake that's the same size or a pie that's the same size as it was 5 years ago, right?
So Dan Driscoll's response essentially to the congressional question of like, we can't see what you're doing if you do it this way, and then B, you have all this extra money. His response was something like NGC2 requires that I'm able to move money around very fast. And so I need these larger pots of money that are consolidated so that I can pick new priorities on the fly as things fail. And he touted a very specific Vantage dashboard, which is built by Palantir, as what will likely become like the ground truth of how money's being spent in the Army, which is an interesting from like its own enterprise software tech adoption perspective, because historically the Army's never passed an audit. It's never happened. So it'll be interesting to see if this Palantir tool and then other tools in general can help the Army increase its own visibility. But I don't know that it's structured in such a way to do ruthless prioritization. I think it's structured in such a way to give them unfettered flexibility, which is rad. Every executive wants that power to like, I need to make decisions I need to make based off of what I see as like the operational needs.
That's definitely the flavor of this administration too,
Sure.
right? Going for more of that, less oversight, more flexibility, more ability to make unilateral decisions and that sort of thing. I'll just say, Dave, that the Marine Corps passes audits. I don't know what the Army is doing over there, but the Marine Corps passes audits. And
it's not hard to count. It's not hard to count $10.
I have 3 of coin, 2 of paper. That's pretty much it around here.
You guys got 110 rifles and 110 gas masks? Okay. Yeah. That checks out.
If we don't, we're going to line everyone up. Don't worry.
Okay. Well, good conversation, gents. As promised, Simon, defend that shirt. I'm seeing Gate Creeper.
Gate Creeper. From Arizona. I don't know if you can see the bottom. It says from Arizona.
It's a snake. It's what is that? A rattlesnake?
Yeah, it's a rattlesnake.
Diamondback?
Probably. Presumably. So scary snake. I don't know. I don't know my snakes.
Scary snake. Sure.
I don't fuck with snakes for good reason.
Yeah.
Death metal band from Arizona. They rip and they make really cool chocolate chip camo t-shirts, which is a classic. Good. Never goes out of style. That's good.
It's a good looking shirt.
I also really appreciate putting on your shirt where you're from.
Yeah.
This is important.
What does it say? It's getting cut off.
From Arizona.
From Arizona. It's very.
That's just what it says. From Arizona.
From Arizona.
The audacity of that.
Yeah. Good.
Like I'm stupid for not knowing that they're from Arizona.
Yeah. You just got to tell people. You got to tell people who you are. Okay. Thanks, gents. Yet another great discussion. And I look forward to next week. For those consuming our content, please drop us comments, like us, follow us, subscribe to us, whatever that button is that you're supposed to mash or whatever people say. I don't really know what to say about all of that, except that you should follow us. Mash it and follow us. Send us comments too. We're interested to understand what you want us to be talking about. Other big kind of stuff going on, maybe outside of our specific worldview that might be useful to discuss. And I look forward to next week. Until then, adios.
Cool.